and is conventional. Now, what you could place here is small and medium enterprise business, all those shopkeepers, the personal, private, but entrepreneurs that you find very often in Malaysia, in Pakistan, in the Middle East, who have no bank connection yet, although they run a shop successfully in the third or fourth generation, and for religious reasons very often. Here you can make a new market, also the product is not very new, therefore this is partly blue, because it's not totally innovative, but it is a free space in the quadrant. Larger business, which would need more shareholders fund money, SMA and commercial, could fill another gap in the quadrant. Then you could have mutuals, PI clubs. This is more innovative. Also, mutuals exist elsewhere. In the takaful world, a pure mutual is not that common because you always have a shareholders fund and that makes it a commercial company. Therefore, those mutuals which still need to be invented or put in place but are theoretically possible and, as I see it, perfectly Sharia compliant, and I didn't hear so far any scholar who had another opinion. They are on the vertical axis more to the cooperative, of course they are cooperative, more to the social and benevolent, less profit-orientated businesses. And they could fill a gap and a space. Probably the same niches, I would assume, the mutual companies filled in Europe or North America, the rural population, the personal lines business. And then you could have large social schemes, social insurance or micro-insurance, micro-takaful, which is even less profit-orientated, probably not so important for big investors, but can cover huge numbers of insureds. Another question is, what is the important point for the existing takaful companies in that? Would they go for that market? Would they compete at it or create income from it? We'll come to that later. And another point that fills the left low quadrant would be public-private partnership schemes on an Islamic basis, especially, of course, in countries where the Islamic Development Bank, OIC, is active and developing projects or handling developing projects. That means this is for natural catastrophes, for infrastructure, that is so far on the international level not handled on an Islamic basis, on an Islamic finance basis, but it is a possibility. So you see, slowly, one finds solution for each quadrant, and one needs to see, okay, is that the question, or is that a proposition for the auditory here? Of course, a PPP scheme needs some support on the administrative level that can come from existing takaful companies, that can come from microfinance institutions, that can come from, as we know, mobile phone offers. But there is a possibility that the distribution system of existing companies can be used. Anyway, for a regulator, for a government, that should be something to be looked into, and it is a new sort of takaful because it's, of course, a different sort of risk. You can't handle it like the retail business of the commercial companies. The same thing with the social schemes. Why should a social insurance, if introduced in countries that can afford it, those who can afford it and still need it, I have to say, some could afford but don't need, and many can neither afford but they would need it. So how can that be set up with that knowledge? So perhaps this is the cake, this is the Big Mac, what I wanted to point out, whether it makes sense to analyze the takaful structure here and say only one of those bubbles, of those forms here, the right, left, is so far mainly in existence, and the others wait for being developed and put in place. And even if it's not directly creating business for the shareholders' company we observe, then indirectly it would help them. They can provide services against fees for them, and it will increase the insurance awareness and also the reputation of insurance in those societies, or at least it could hopefully do so. And give a better structure anyway to all those societies for the risk mitigation among the working earning classes. If there is a sort of security net below it, you can put your company strategy on top of it. If the commercial companies should cover for all those risks, that would never work. They would be overstretched. Okay? Looking forward to discussing that if that's... So, just the last thing, refraining, cross-check with the basic intentions. Do these forms I have put in the quadrants comply to the intention apart from the shape? So I come back to the second slide. They are refraining from non-halal investments. That's the basic. Reserves built in all these types will be according to Islamic finance rules, and therefore also avoid riba. They will not be all of them mutual. Some will be even clearer, pure mutual. Some will not work on tabarrur basis. Some, like the PPP, public-private partnership, will not have a mutual structure, but it's more a governmental structure. Some, like the SME business or Islamic project business, if developed, will be very demutualized by nature of the business. So this is the point where probably sticking to the current shape would be a limitation in expanding the market, but it's the only point. On the other hand, it is exactly differentiating and increasing the variety of those models that could help us covering all the 4 quadrants in that system, and therefore achieving the goal of introduction of risk management for the yet uninsured Muslim population. And that was the point I wanted to make. Thank you very much.
That was a wonderful presentation, of course, which was expected from Dr. Ludwig, the Stiftl. Before I ask the audience for the questions, one question, Doctor, I would like to put you across. And I was just taking a note of while you were doing this presentation. You talked about in the panel discussion, which somehow we saw like everyone was not on the same platform on advantages versus conventional and this. Although this is not subject, but just coming to takaful, let's put it relevant. What is a competitive advantage you see from the consumer point of view, or even to an insurance broker you suggest, or you can impress that we should suggest to the consumer against conventional, and there should be a USP or a competitive advantage of takaful?
I mean, that was, if I understood it correctly, more or less the same question I was asked on the panel.
Yes.
That means the unique selling point was...
No, because of market dominance, which you have conventional for years. And then takaful, since we know that it's still prematured, has not reached to that maturity. It will take some time. We do agree that all. So we are not trying to draw a parallel with the market dominance which they have. But what I'm trying to ask you is, Doctor, that there has to be a competitive advantage of every product. So this is a product, takaful. What you feel that there is a competitive advantage from you which you can impress to the masses with?
It's a selling argument, to take the last point as the first. For many, if the rest of the structure and the product is working and comparable, then it is an additional argument. In Europe, one may be abhorrent of taking Sharia-compliant products. In Malaysia, for example, there is a number of Chinese, it's always overestimated, I think, but there's a good number of Chinese Buddhists who buy that, namely because they expect surplus redistribution at the same upfront contribution. Because the Chinese do not have any reservations against Islamic law. But the Europeans do. Here, it's definitely a selling argument. Nobody has objections. Not everyone poses his decision on it. So that's one point. The other point is that the investment is riba-free. The whole thing is riba-free. You are not financing haram investments, or not to a large extent at least. There are thresholds very often for that. These would be the argument. If I was to sell a takaful policy, and I never tried to, on the direct side, then I would use these.
Wonderful. Let's come to audience, and if you have some question for Doctor, I think he's the best one to answer from takaful industry. Anyone? So wonderful. Thank you very much for the presentation, Doctor, and we look forward again to see you in the next summit. So let's move to our next panelist speaker, and the next panelist speaker is Mr. Murat Hakan Irozar, and from Auto Analyze, General Manager. Mr. Irozar started his career in the hospitality industry and has worked with hotels like Hilton, Conrad, Hilton, Holiday Inn, and Ramada Hotels. He, AGF GAN Insurance as a project manager, he was there in 1995 and then moved to Mondial Assistance Alliance as general manager until 2003. And he has been a part of Auto Alliance since then and is currently the general manager. So here is the DAS for you, Mr. Murat.
Today, I will not make a lot of advertisement about Auto Analyze, but actually I will try to give you information what happened in the Turkish market since 10 years. Turkey, as you know, is situated, is near Europe, near Asia, so the culture is very near here, but also at the same time European culture. So it is very important to know what happened in Turkey. Now, we created the company in 2003, and at the moment we have 80% of the market share, which means that we're working with all foreign companies in Turkey. And today foreign companies, they have 75% of the Turkish market. So for the foreign companies, it's a very important place to be. Today, I would like to also explain to you about, you will see there, Auto Analyze are shareholders of GS Turk. Maybe you may not know about what is Centro Zaragoza. Centro Zaragoza is also an institute owned by 20 international companies in Spain, and they have a big institute where they do all sort of testings, spare part certification, quality management, all kind of information database management. This is very important because for the quality, for the insurance companies to keep up the quality and to have a say in the market, you need an institute to tell the car industry, the services, all the third-party players what the standards are. Because when you don't put the standards, the market put the standards for you. So the insurance companies must be very careful while putting the standards. But this is not the topic of the day, but it's an important issue for the insurance industry.